Is a 30-year veteran of teaching. She has taught at the same school, Fairview Elementary School in Fairview, North Carolina, for all those years. Fairview is as close a thing to a suburb as Asheville, North Carolina, a town of 70,000, can get. And Fairview was the home of the Odoms for 10 years. Ms. Penland is now retired, but she has had a great impact on the Odom family. She was our daughter Elizabeth's kindergarten teacher, and you could not have asked for better. Ms. Penland had some really simple rules. Mom and Dad, this is what she called all the parents of the children in her class, regardless of whether she knew your name or not. Mom and Dad, you are entrusting your little ones to my care, and I want you to remember just two things. One, it's Ms. Penland's class. What Ms. Penland says and does in class is the way it's going to be. And two, if you have any problem with the way things are going with your child or my teaching or anything else in class, then you come and see Ms. Penland, and Ms. Penland will take care of it. And then she smiled, this beatific smile, and you knew that all would be well. And it was, until about 6 weeks into kindergarten. Elizabeth came home one day and said that one of the little boys in her class was leaving his mat during a quiet time and was sneaking over to Elizabeth and kissing her. Emily and I remembered Ms. Penland's rules. So we went straight to Ms. Penland for the solution. Ms. Penland said, Mom and Dad, you don't worry. Ms. Penland will take care of it. And she did. Mom and Dad did not hear any more about little boys kissing our daughter during quiet time. And then Mom and Dad had our first semester conference, and Ms. Penland asked us if there had been any more problems with kissing, and we said no. And then Ms. Penland said, I didn't think so. Ms. Penland took care of it. And then she went on to tell us how Ms. Penland took care of it. She said that Ms. Penland simply took Elizabeth aside and told her that if there were ever any little boys in class that were kissing her during quiet time, that she, Elizabeth, had Ms. Penland's permission to haul off and slap the fire out of that kid. And Miss Penland would politely look the other way. Friends, kissing can be dangerous. We all know that. Kissing can be a gateway drug to all sorts of complicated activity. It can lead to second base and third base and home run. Kissing is complicated by the fact that we live in a world of date rape drugs, pedophiles, sexual predator priests, of hooking up and STDs, of teen pregnancies and multi-billion-dollar cravings for erectile dysfunction medications. And in general, the Bible recognizes that sexuality is a powerful thing, a good thing, but something that needs to be dealt with responsibly and within certain boundaries. In Matthew 5, Jesus says, everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Better to rip out your eye than to be thrown into hell with it. Now, that's a rather hard regulation. Besides, in a day or two, all the men that I know of would probably be blind. In 1 Corinthians 5, Paul instructs the church to enact church discipline. And this is true. You can check me. 1 Corinthians 5, about a man who is sleeping with his mother-in-law. Well, that's helpful, but it would be nice to get some biblical and religious guidance about sexuality and intimacy for situations between lustful thoughts and unrepentant sex with your mother-in-law. So, I thought that we would start today with a kiss. Paul's letters to the Corinthians have some of the most detail in the New Testament regarding sexual purity and church discipline. Because of all the New Testament churches, the church in Corinth appears to have struggled the most with sexual sins. Through tears, Paul writes his letters to the church at Corinth. And yet Paul ends both of his letters to the Corinthians in this way. Greet one another with a holy kiss. And then in 1 Thessalonians he says, greet the brothers with a holy kiss. And did you notice Paul isn't merely suggesting kissing? Paul is demanding kissing. Paul uses the imperative tense. Kissing is a commandment, not merely an option. According to scholars, there were no kissing customs in Greco-Roman society. The Anchor Bible Dictionary has this to say about the issue. There is general agreement that the holy kiss has its origins in the practice which emerged in the early church among believers themselves, with the impetus probably coming from the shape of their life with Jesus himself. Nothing analogous to it is to be found among any Greco-Roman societies, nor indeed at Qumran. The social context of the practice involves the form of salutations emerging from the first Christians. So, the first Christians were committed kissers who probably took their pattern in part from the start and from the story of the woman in Luke 7, who crashes a banquet with Jesus and his disciples and washes Jesus' feet with her tears and covers his feet with her kisses. Peter tries to stop her, but Jesus reprimands him for not being more like her. The early church took these kissing commands from Christ and the disciples literally. Every worship service soon included the kiss of peace. They also kissed at baptisms. They kissed at funerals. They kissed at ordinations. They kissed at communion. It was customary to go to the prisoners and kiss martyrs before they were to be executed. Tertullian, the church father, asked if any prayer could be complete without a holy kiss. It wasn't long before Clement of Alexandria complained that the church was filled with the sound of kissing. Over time, then, the holy kiss became a little more regulated and legislated. After all, kisses can be abused. They're dangerous. By the 3rd century, kissing in church no longer was allowed between people of the opposite sex. You could still kiss same sex as much as you wanted to. And then in the 13th century, kissing was banned from church altogether. The holy kiss has now disappeared from church except for our much more antiseptic passing of the peace. Indeed, if you and I were obedient to Scripture and kissed everybody at Star Mount on Sunday morning, and every Sunday morning we came, we would probably be asked to leave. But the Bible still commands you to greet one another with a kiss. Or perhaps the most famous story Jesus ever told is about kissing. We call it the story of the prodigal son, but we could just as soon name it the story of the kissing father. You know the story. The youngest son takes his father's inheritance and spends it on dissolute living. And when he runs out of money, he comes to his senses. He decides to return to his father. And when the father sees his son from a great distance, the father runs to him and hugs him and kisses him. And at that moment, the boy longs to be the son of the father again, the prodigal kisser. Don't you see how the father's love, acceptance, and intimacy are shown in a kiss? So if you think God's command for kissing will lead to promiscuity, I think it's exactly the opposite. The truth is that humans, you and I, we were made for intimacy. Without intimacy, infants die. Solitary confinement can drive a person insane. God made us for legitimate intimacy, for relationships, for connection, for love. But you and I live in a world where our strong need for intimacy has been sexualized. Because we don't get our needs for love and connection met, we look for lesser substitutes. So enter the holy kiss. Enter the Bible. Enter the life of faith. You see, you and I have a God who is a prodigal kisser. We have a God who wants to share love with us. We have a God who knows us through and loves us still and all. And it is when you and I are met with those lavish, grace-filled kisses of acceptance by God, it is when we feel God's intimate embrace in our lives that we are changed. Now, I know that kissing makes us awfully vulnerable. Some of us may have been abused by unholy kisses. They make you never want to risk kissing again. Well, you're not the only one who has been betrayed by a kiss. Remember Jesus? A kiss, intimacy, connection makes us vulnerable to be wounded. After all, who is it that can hurt me the most? It's the people that I kiss the most. My wife, my kids, my mom, my church. C.S. Lewis wrote, "To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will certainly be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, then you must give your heart to no one. Lock it up safe in the coffin of selfishness. In the casket, it will change. The only place outside of heaven where you can be saved from all the dangers and perturbations of love is hell." Greet one another with a holy kiss. Well, you and I often hide our hearts in far countries because we're afraid of being hurt, or we look for intimacy and love and acceptance in all the wrong places when all we need is a holy kiss, the love, acceptance, and intimacy of God our Father. And because we avoid holy kisses, we cut ourselves off from the good that can come from a kiss. If I'm trying to be selfish and you kiss me, your kiss burns my selfishness. If I'm trying to be arrogant and you kiss me, the kiss burns my pride. If I'm trying to be mad at Emily and she kisses me, the kiss messes up my anger. If I'm trying to be your enemy and you shower me with kisses and kindness, it's like you're heaping coals on my head. Good kisses, godly kisses, holy kisses help us come to our senses, help us see life as it was meant to be, and burn away all manner of evil. The holy kiss is an act of judgment. If you and I resist it, it burns us. But when we surrender to it, it makes all things new.